Good morning, everyone. We are in Mishna Harah, Perek Beis, Chapter 2, Mishnah Yud, Mishnah 10. I'd like to dedicate today's Mishnah memory of my mother, Mr. Shlomis Rabinowitz, Shlomis Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. Tavlin, which means spices, but we're actually referring to anything that flavors. The examples cited here are garlic, onions, oil, vinegar, wine. These are all things that add flavor. They all fall under this word tavlin, which literally means spices, but it means things that give flavor. Shnayim ushloisha shemais min echad. They're all the same species, but they have two or three names, meaning they are all the same species, but they're from different prohibitions. So, for instance, let's say we're talking about pepper. The pepper could be truma. Some of it was truma, some of it was from an asherah tree, from a tree that was worshipped. So we got three separate prohibitions on the same spice. Or let's say it's three different things from the same prohibition. So for instance, ginger, pepper, and cinnamon, all of Arla. They all share the same prohibition, but they're different things. So that's the case. What we have, so the case here is that we have a number of spices. Either it's different spices of the same prohibition, or different spices of the same prohibition, or three species of the same prohibition, or one species with three different prohibitions. And they fell into chulin, into permissible food. And the question now is that each one of them on their own cannot spice the food. However, if we combine them together, their combined flavor would be noticeable, would be there. So each one on its own, its flavor would be batal, would be nullified. But combining them together, their flavor that comes about through all three of them together now does provide flavor. So what do we look at? Do we say that it can combine to say that now their flavor forbids the food? Or do they not combine? So the Mishnah says, Asr mitztarfen, which means they can combine and now make the food forbidden. This is a case where the three different things have a similar level of taste that when they come together, it says here, the Mishnah speaks of a case where the tastes of all three were similar enough so that they can reinforce one another and can be tasted together in the mixture. That's for this to happen. That's what it has to be. They have to be similar enough that they can reinforce each other. So Mishnah is saying that they can reinforce each other. So now I have this flavor of prohibition. It may be three different prohibitions, it may be three different types of things, but if they can reinforce each other's flavor, and now I have a taste from all three of them that now is detectable in the food, it's going to be forbidden. Rabbi Shimon says, Shnayim ushloisha shemais min echad. If I have two or three different prohibitions of the same type, or I have two types that share the same prohibition, Einan mitztarfen. Rabbi Shimon says they cannot combine. If they are of different prohibitions or of different species, they cannot combine, says Rabbi Shimon. And if they cannot combine, then I look at them separately. If I look at them separately, then I say, well, this one's flavor on its own is not enough, and therefore it's nullified. This one's flavor on its own is not enough, therefore it's nullified. According to Rabbi Shimon, once there's a difference between them, whether in their prohibition or in their type, they cannot combine. So that's the machlokes, that's the argument. The Tanakam, the first opinion, says that even if they are of different types or of different prohibitions, they can still combine to reinforce their flavor. Now I have a detectable flavor that is forbidden. It's going to forbid the food, or if it's going to forbid the food. If we're talking about, but according to Reb Shimon, once it's either a different type or if it's a different prohibition, they cannot combine. And according to Reb Shimon, they will be nullified. If each one on its own can't give flavor, it's going to be nullified. According to Rabbi Shimon, the food's going to be permissible. The halacha is not like Rabbi Shimon, it's like the Tanakama, like the first opinion, that even if they are different types or different species or different prohibitions, they can still combine together. We continue with the laws of Rechilas, Klal Hey, chapter 5, in the Chafetz Chaim, Sif Beis, paragraph 2. The first paragraph, the Chafetz Chaim said, it's prohibited to believe Rechilas. Now, Beis, Va'af al Shmias Rechilas Bobad, and now just on listening to Rechilas alone, Gam Kan Yesh Isser Gadol Kamei B'Lashon Harah, there is a serious prohibition, as we find by Lashon Harah. Even though while he's listening, he's not necessarily accepting it as the truth, but nonetheless, just listening to Lashon Harah is prohibited, or listening to Rechilas is prohibited. Nonetheless, the prohibition of accepting, of believing, is more stringent than just listening. Because regard to listening to it, if you already can sense from the beginning of the story, this person is going to tell you, that he now realizes that knowing this can be very relevant to him if it's true. He sees that his friend wants to tell him. He sees that he wants to tell him that so-and-so is out to get him, is out to damage him physically, monetarily. You already sense that that's what he's trying. From the beginning of his story, you see that's what he's trying to tell you. You're allowed to listen to that in order to protect yourself from the person. To accept as the absolute truth that this guy's out to get you, you're not allowed to do that. But you could take it into consideration solely for the purposes of protecting himself. As our sages said, the Lishna Bisha, when it comes to Lashon Harah, which includes Rechilas, although he's not supposed to accept it, to believe it, he's allowed to keep it in mind. He's allowed to take it into consideration. And therefore, previously, he went through what's the best way of being able to do this, of to listen to what he's about to say in a way that you basically cover all your bases. So, for instance, I believe the Chafetz Chaim said before that, if this person is going to tell you, it's important to point out to him that you're listening to it because of the fact that you're trying to protect yourself. If it's a question of how you're supposed to know whether it's relevant or not, Chafetz Chaim said previously that a person should, before the person speaks, tell him, is this going to be relevant for me or not to listen to? And that will basically protect you from hearing Lashon Harah or Rechilas that you're not supposed to hear. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.